1,555, and we are really burning midnight oil tonight. 1,555 days since Richard was code red, premeditatedly murdered. Oh, sorry. On Fort Bliss. On Fort Bliss. Can you believe it? And it's internal, you know? It's internal. It's a code red. That means that his chain of command, his leadership ordered that he be murdered, that he be silenced. Before that, it was the retaliation. Don't forget that Major General Clem Coward retaliated against Richard unjustly, tried to ruin him. Same with Lieutenant Colonel Roddick, Michael Roddick, unjustly. It's so unjust that they had to sanitize Richard's files. Um, and, it was one of the main reasons that they had to go to the extreme that they did. I think him being a Christian, I think this was retaliation against a Christian. I think this was retaliation against a whistleblower. And why do I say this Christian thing? The We just had a presidential candidate named Kamala Harris, who's our vice president, commit a hate crime against Christians, and she is not being charged for that. Where, where's the outrage? Maybe she's going to be charged, but she should absolutely, it should have been swift. Because if it was for any other group, everybody would have acted swiftly. And what does that tell me? Well, she, of course, the president is the commander in chief of the military. She's the vice president. The military knows this. If the military has this kind of attitude that is reflected in their top leader, a vice president, this hate crime against Christians, and one of the very first things that CID tried to use against us was our Christianity. Okay? They tried to use that against us, against our son, and it blew up in their face because we immediately uh, requested all of Richard's belongings. And when we received those belongings, very few, because you could tell it was all tampered with, one of those boxes, it was only 3 boxes, I believe 3 boxes. One box was entirely a Christmas tree with Christmas decorations. So that blew up in their face. And we believe that he was retaliated against severely with this code red. For one of the reasons was because he was a Christian. Another reason because he was whistleblowing and exposing Fort Bliss's connection with the criminal trafficking, with the drug trafficking, with the child corn trafficking, with the child trafficking, with the guns trafficking, with the ammunition trafficking, with the equipment trafficking, with the through the tactical move storage units, through their connections that were compromised with the Mexican cartel in the law enforcement and the judicial system. And of course, the Fort Bliss's connection with the Walmart mass shooting. Um, we believe those are the reasons that they started retaliating. It got um, severe hate, absolutely a hate crime. And the other reasons were because Yvonne Rosales won her election on the 14th of July, 2020. That's very important because that was not supposed to happen. That was not supposed to happen. And being, El Paso is a very deep blue county. If you're a Democrat and you have won your vote, you are just guaranteed to win the vote in November. So when she won July 14th, 2020, it was a guarantee that she was going to be the next district attorney starting January of 2021. So that's when she took office. And that's really important because Richard, of course, was murdered in July of 2020, shortly after that. The other incident, it was a double whammy, and I should have done it in chronological order. But on July 9th, 2020, the retaliation that they had, I want to say orchestrated for against Richard, starting in January of 2020. So they started this really frame job orchestration to retaliate against him, to silence him, to discredit him in January of 2020. July 9th of 2020, that blew it up in their face. He was totally exonerated. July 9th of 2020. They had no legal grounds for what they had done to him from January to July, right? All the retaliation, which was continuous and severe, all of that retaliation, weaponizing their powers, weaponizing their tools that we have entrusted to these leaders, but they weaponized them against Richard, and they did it thinking that they could do it before there was ever a conviction. And it blew up in their face because Richard was exonerated. And, you have a lot of military hanging around seeing the results of the findings of any wrongdoings before they can proceed in using the tools for reprimand against soldiers. They need to find out, we have a presumption of innocence in this country. But yet, Richard's leadership gave him none of that. They gave him none of that. And when July 9th came up and he was totally exonerated, that was very bad for them. Because what were they going to do? Were they going to give Richard all of his rank back? Were they going to give him his pay back that they took away? Were they going to say, oh, I'm sorry for the 45 days of extra duty wearing full battle gear and a mask and calling you every name under the sun and everything like that? Were they going to say sorry? Oh, let me give you some restitution for that. Let us make up for that. No, that happened July 9th, 2020. Yvonne Rosales, who, remember, the prosecutor, the prosecutor won the election. It was an upset. She wasn't supposed to get it. She was not the man that was supposed to get it. Man being human, okay? That's what I mean by that. She was not the man that they had endorsed, that they had put the gold star on or whatever. No, this was an upset election, and that was a double whammy for them because now they were in total wrongdoing of severe and continuous retaliation, unlawful, continuous, severe retaliation against a soldier, abusing their power, abusing their tools, weaponizing the tools that we have given them for discipline in the military. And the violations against a whistleblower, because that was another reason. Richard had been whistleblowing. It was clear that he was in communication. We have it on file that he was in communication with CID, with FBI Houston, with the IG, with Washington, D.C., with 911, and with CPS, with Child Protective Services. And so he had been whistleblowing. And what were they going? They were in so much trouble when it came to a legitimate prosecutor. So if anybody wants to wonder, and to put things in timeline and to segue then into Joe and Sam in the Walmart case court debacle that's going on. Very expensive debacle. When all this was happening, audits were taking place. When Richard was whistleblowing, that came before the Walmart mass shooting. August 3rd, 2019, Richard had already been whistleblowing. There is no other way to understand all the evidence that we have. There is no other way. Our evidence absolutely leads the timeline to Richard whistleblowing in 2019 and the audits happening, the active and ongoing investigations into El Paso, into, Fort Bliss, into Fort Bliss. And that's been corroborated by Brigadier General Stewart and CID lead agent that's dirty as anything. Both of them are dirty. Both of them are totally dirty. Brigadier General Stewart. But, just because they're dirty doesn't mean they're the sharpest tack. And they absolutely revealed to us that Fort Bliss was under scrutiny, under audit, which means active and ongoing investigations of the ongoings of Fort Bliss. And that was, now that we know that the leadership is compromised by the Mexican cartel, that the DA's office is compromised by the Mexican cartel, that the uh, medical, the chief medical examiner is compromised by the cartel, that the El Paso ISD is compromised by the cartel, that the Texas Rangers are compromised by the cartel, that the Department of State um, in Juarez, Mexico is compromised by the cartel. Now that we know that, and Nadal Bayim compromised by the cartel, which means the Army, because Nadal Bayim is the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd ATCOM, compromised by the cartel, which was Richard's unit. Now that we know that, I'm going to tell you that Fort Bliss leadership, Matlock, right? General Matlock, he did not at all want an audit or active and ongoing investigations on Fort Bliss. They were compromised. And they act for personal gain. Clearly, they are not defending the Constitution of the United States. Clearly. Which means that all of our volunteer sons and daughters that are under their leadership are in danger. That means that our national security is in danger, because Fort Bliss, we know for a fact, that it was that Fort Bliss security was totally breached. And it's been breached. Which is absolutely national security threat, and a threat and a risk to all those volunteer sons and daughters. And now you understand why they allow continuous drunkenness in the barracks. 14-year-old girls being pimped out, living in the barracks, that happened to be the stepdaughter of a security guard, that they were bringing in girls during the COVID lockdown for the parties. Lots of them. And I don't know if they asked how old they were. They did not want audits and active and ongoing investigations in their mess. And therefore, we believe that the Walmart mass shooting was orchestrated to be a diversion from and stop and we even believe that COVID was also a big diversion from the active and ongoing investigations on Fort Bliss. And why is that such a big deal? And why are we so bold to say that? Because just the drug trafficking is $80 billion a year. We're talking about very big money. And I didn't even mention the organ trafficking. I didn't even mention the fraud, waste, and abuse with the VA Pueblo veterans benefits, veterans disability benefits, fraud, waste, and abuse that we have reported and filed on. This is really very serious claims. And it's big money. And it absolutely shows the motive that they would orchestrate the Walmart mass shooting, which leads us to the hearing yesterday, and reporting on that hearing yesterday, and now getting a a little bit of more information about what happened, thinking about it, still thinking about it. But what really came out of all of this is, thank you, Anicia, for coming on. I see you. Thank you so much. Was that Joe Spencer admitted to being lawless. He admitted to committing crimes, and that Judge Sam Medrano also admitted to committing crimes. They both committed to those crimes. And we want to stress that what they were admitting to and what is being reported today is these backdoor deals, these back room deals. I should say back room deals that they were making to stop the Walmart mass shooting case from moving forward, to stop Patrick Crusius from having a mental health evaluation, to stop Patrick Crusius's the mental evaluation from being revealed. They sealed it. They sealed it. They sealed these backroom deals. And the other thing that people need to know, there's so much here. There's so much, but we've got to focus on what is really such huge violations that absolutely require that Judge Medrano is removed from the case. I would say that they would be put in handcuffs. And it is very telling today in the picture that I posted that Luis Rene Diaz, who is the chief of staff for the district attorney's office under the usurper, Bill Hicks, that they were there at this hearing, of course, that he was there, and he was all jolly shaking hands with Bob Moore. And I'll tell you, Bob Moore, Luis Rene Diaz, who is compromised with the Mexican cartel, and Bill Hicks, whose greatest supporter, who funds the number one funder of Bill Hicks, is Purchase Funeral Homes. This is a Juarez-based funeral home. So a foreign business is what funds him the most. And that they were chubby together. That Bob Moore was chubby with Luis Rene Diaz. And, okay, fine, you need to be whatever. There are lines that have to be drawn. When you're talking about the human trafficking, drug trafficking, when those lives, you've got, 325 to 500,000 unaccompanied missing children that are mostly dead. And you have major deaths from fentanyl. And you have major fraud, waste, and abuse. And you have somebody that has been arrested for extortion, being chief of staff in an office for a usurper. I think that Bob Moore being neutral needs to be neutral a different way. Of course, he's not neutral, and we know he's not neutral because he hasn't responded to us, our 15 plus times of attempted, or more, way more, the communications with him. So or filings, whatever to get his attention. He ran from our cease and desist. Maybe we should have had someone there to hand him the cease and desist. Um, so it is really, um, I think, serious business. I want to say jaw dropping or whatever. But, this is far beyond that. We need to actually do something. We can't just be shocked. We can't just cry. We can't just run and hide. We have to actually do something. And, you know, the likes of these characters, look at these characters. They are the ones, they are the ones that are usurping. They are the ones that are connected to such big criminal networks. Hurting people. And they're stopping the Walmart mass shooting from going forward. And Bill Hicks and Luis Rene Diaz, they're hitting hard on Joe Spencer. Um, and they wouldn't be, but because we have submitted numerous reports, we've filed numerous reports. Um, I think we have impacted that they now are having to point out the backroom deals, the millions and millions of dollars for what? To make some look, millions of dollars for Patrick Crusius. Crusius was living in a very, very posh apartment in San Antonio. They had no reason to want to pull off his crime in El Paso if he lives in San Antonio. Okay? Um, he went and ate before it. Look at him. Look at him. He has autism. He has a severe mental health condition. They prevented him from getting a mental health evaluation in these back room deals. And then when I think it was Loretta Lynn Hewitt, I'm not sure, but it was in 2023 that, it could have been the jail that wanted to know, who am I dealing with here, Patrick Crusius? Who is he? I need to know his mental health because he looks emotionless. The being a teacher, we, aged hyperactivity. Um, you'd have these boys that were just rambunctious, and then they would say, this is me. I'm not. This is my opinion now, and they're rambunctious. They're boys. Um, and then, oh, they're too hyper. They got to get tested for hyperactivity, and let's put them on medication. And you would see them on medication, and this is what it looks like to me. Just emotionless, just gutted. Now, he's not like, it looks like he has floppy arms. It looks like he doesn't have the energy to lift up his arms. Of course, he's weighted down by the chains, which are so illegal. So illegal. The federal jurisdiction and the state jurisdiction are totally two different jurisdictions. If he was convicted in the federal jurisdiction, that is separate. That is totally separate from the state jurisdiction. I think it's like double jeopardy, but whatever. The law The law says they're two very separate, distinct jurisdictions, and that the state has the right to try him. Okay. The Texas Constitution allows for the presumption of innocence. You don't tamper with the jury pool and tamper with the community and the jury pool by parading Patrick Crusius around in jail clothing, jail shoes, chains around his entire skinny little stick body. Sorry, he looks like he's being starved. He looks very, very pale. There's not, I didn't see any like tattoo representing what he believes or whatever. He looks very pale. He's very hairy. He's not bald. Like, they call him like some kind of white supremacist. Well, isn't that like bald and tattooed or what? I don't know. Whatever. That's kind of just me thinking out loud here. But you don't parade him around in this jail gear with a bulletproof vest on, with the chains, when you're supposed to have a presumption of innocence. And they have security, and they had him already in there before. It looks like he doesn't have the muscles to lift up his own arms. He doesn't even have the mental emotion. He is emotionless. That's what's shocking to me to see. There's not one bit of anger in his eyes for being kept in seclusion and security for 5 years. 5 years. And to have to deal with Joe Spencer and, my defense lawyer over here, what's his name? I always forget his name. Let me look at that because I need to memorize it. I wrote it down here. Mark Stevens. It looks like he fell asleep. Oh, my defense attorney. I'm facing the death penalty. My defense attorney's falling asleep. Joe Spencer's making backroom deals to keep my mental health a secret and not even give me any kind of mental health defense here. And he's so calm. He's so calm. He not even calm. He is like emotionless, and his civil rights are being broken everywhere. What's taken so long? I wasn't even read my Miranda rights. My hands weren't even bagged. What's going on here? He doesn't have any emotion like that. But yet they have these, I think they had a hard time with putting the handcuffs and the foot cuffs, the chains on him, because they must have had to find like the smallest, skinniest little pair to fit on him. It's and his family seems to have deserted him. The people have seemed to desert him. And yes, I understand that he might be guilty. But the federal case, the plea, he wasn't even in trial. We don't even know the evidence. And I'm all for the presumption of innocence. And when you look at the pictures of that day when he has a mental health condition, right? A severe mental health condition. And he, had the ear things on and the rifle in his hand. There was no shells behind him, which would have been if there were shots fired, right? And then he goes and surrenders himself to a Hispanic law enforcement officer if he would have been a white supremacist, he wouldn't have done that. And he was so kind to do it. He has his hands up. He's like, yeah, it's me, and his shirt's clean and his pants are clean and his shoes are clean. And if he had been in there having autism, severe autism, with all of those noises and the screams and everything like that, they are very sensitive to those noises. He would never have been 17 minutes later so calm to surrender himself, right? No splatters of soda on him, no splatters of the life of him, right? Shoes totally clean. There would have been evidence. There would have been evidence. And what Ernest Christopher Grant said that he had done, there would have been mega evidence, but there wasn't any. Therefore, the El Paso Police Department were driven to admit that Ernest Christopher Grant is the biggest liar. And why he isn't arrested, I don't know, because he should be arrested. Because he was the media sweetheart and was like the spokesman for anti-guns with Governor Abbott because of the Walmart, and so was Texas Heart, the spokesman in Dallas, Dallas Morning News, happens to be Angela Kachurga's husband that interviewed him. I mean, this is totally unraveling. Totally unraveling. And Joe Spencer and Judge Medrano admitted to committing crimes with these ex parte backroom deals, is being reported, to tamper and interfere with this case. And Bill Hicks, smiling a little bit there, not looking the greatest, but smiling a little bit. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to let their ship sink. His ship already sank. Bill Hicks did. But look, he's, I guess misery loves company. And Joe Spencer. And then Felix Valenzuela. Okay, so you've got Mark Stevens falling asleep. Felix Valenzuela broke the gag order. And Joe Spencer admits to committing crimes with the judge of the case. I mean, and parading Patrick Crusius, tampering, in my opinion, with the jury pool with Patrick Crusius. I mean, it's just absolutely. And under all of this, y'all, is Richard Halliday's truth. Richard Halliday's truth is under all of this. This is what they're covering up. Richard Halliday's truth, and do not forget that. And, we've been right about so many things. So many things. And under all of this manipulation, these false witnesses, they brought in Rosa Maria, called her a witness. She's a false witness. She wasn't anywhere near the Walmart mass shooting. She was in Mexico. They tampered with evidence, submitted false evidence. I can go on and on, but two things they admitted to now: illegal backroom deals. They admitted to illegal backroom deals in order to delay and tamper with the very defense of Patrick Crusius by his defense attorney. And Judge Medrano okayed, allowed the millions of dollars to be paid out to this mess, for years and years and years and years and years. He's the one that approved the millions of dollars. This is one of the largest cases, if not the largest case in U.S. history. Richard's case is so big because Richard's case is the Walmart case. The Walmart case is Richard's case. The Walmart case is covering Richard's truth. Richard is under this. He's been buried under this. The Code Red has been buried under this. His remains, where they're at, is buried under this. Those that murdered him are buried under this. And it's heart-wrenching because it's for the trafficking. You know, if we had a better economy, then we wouldn't have so many people wanting to go along with this, because who knows how many people depend on the destruction of others. It's called a moral hazard. There's a whole theory of moral hazard, right? Where you are led to such desperation that you will give up your morals to do anything. And this has absolutely been a moral hazard. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. It's been just another wild day going through. And, you know, I'm working on presenting this to the public. It's so important. And of course, all of the responses that we have to do behind the scenes. We have submitted and filed hundreds of letters, and all of them are starting to pay off. There are things that we've done about Patrick Crusius's mental health. You know, we submitted complaints about that months ago, maybe over a year ago. You know, we submitted many different things to this case because it is absolutely covering Richard's truth. And all of that is starting to pay off, because with Joe Spencer admitting that Patrick Crusius has autism, and it's severe, because it was reported that his neighbors say that when he was 3 years old, he was banging his head on the sidewalk, and they said it like that was a normal thing. And I know when I, for a short time, took care of autistic children, they have to wear helmets. We had to, many of them, when they're severe, they have to wear helmets because they will bang their head. And we had to take cotton and wrap their arms and hands because they would bite their arms and hands. It's a very difficult condition, and it takes a lot of care. Um, and it was very right of the jail or Loretta Lynn Hewitt to request a mental health evaluation for Patrick Crusius so that they would absolutely know what they were dealing with. This schizo, oh, other condition, I wrote it down too, that he was supposed to have. Schizoaffective. Um, I don't know a lot about that. I've just read about it, but I do know about autism, and you need to know. You need to know what, if you're taking care of a person, what they have. And for Joe Spencer to deny the jailer, to deny the who was in charge of taking care of him in prison. And you have this big attitude, like, oh, let him be buried underneath the jailhouse or whatever. Wait a minute. No, that's not how our system works. Our system is humane. And yes, we have the death penalty. And let me tell you, there's a lot of people in this case that are facing the death penalty. And for very, very egregious crimes. But they need to be given the chance to plead their case, because we don't know everything. And Patrick Crusius needs a chance to plead his case. And for years, people didn't even know he was autistic. That was a crime, because his family, his neighbors absolutely knew that he was autistic, severely autistic. And he needs a chance to plead his case. That's why he surrendered himself, so he could be at least treated humanely. And that means that whoever is treating him needs to know what they're dealing with. And Joe Spencer is a total criminal. A total criminal, lousy. With him as a defense lawyer, who needs an enemy? I mean, it's like, my goodness, you don't want your client that's making you millions and millions of taxpayers' money, because, Patrick Crusius, he's from wealth. What paperwork? I believe that there's been a crime committed about filling out paperwork for Patrick Crusius in order to get federal and state funding for millions and millions of dollars. And that's why we've submitted open records, because this is taxpayers' money. This is our money. It's federal money. So it's state money, it's Texans' money, and it's federal money too. It's a double doozer. And what paperwork? How was that filled out in order to get that funding? And they're not giving it to us. Why? Why? We have the right to it. This is not a tyranny. This is not, this is a democracy, a republic, right? We have transparency. We have open records requests, laws. 10 days. 10 days. Where is it? Where is it? What kind of paperwork did Patrick Crusius fill out, or who filled it out for him, in order to not have to pay his own defense or part of his own defense, but get state and federal millions of dollars in order to pay a lousy defense attorney and team. Look, you got Felix Valenzuela, who, he's the Mormon uh, lawyer, right? He's the one that's connected to Leilani Hart, right? Because Leilani Hart's Mormon, they go to their Mormon lawyers. Um, this is a big connection. And he just broke the gag order. He just broke the gag order for the defense team. And Mark Stevens was sleeping. It looked like he was sleeping. Maybe he was concentrating. I don't know, just closing his eyes. But let me tell you, his client is facing the death penalty. Apparently, he's not afraid that Patrick Crusius would lean over and bite him or something. He was so relaxed. He was so relaxed and even could close his eyes, right? So, yeah, there's so many violations here. I could probably go all night long because think about this. You have 23 people that are dead. Their families have been waiting for over 5 years. You have 23 that were injured. They and their families have been waiting for over 5 years. They have done such an injustice to the community, to the 23 victims' families, to the 23 injured families. They're victims also. All of these are victims. And what's going on? Nobody wants to do their job? Nobody cares about the victims? And and what do I mean by that? Caring about the victims. Making sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. Making sure you follow the law in a mass shooting case, right? In a mass shooting in a mass shooting case, mass murder case, that you follow the law so that you can determine who the shooters are. And now Austin is telling us that there is absolutely indication that Patrick Crusius did not act alone. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to be right again. And, who are at large walking around that did this crime? Right? You need to follow the law in order to get justice. Proper justice. That's why we have the law. That's why we have these steps that we take so that the innocent aren't wrongly convicted and that the blame goes to the rightful perpetrators. And the evidence being brought to trial would lead to that. How many trials on TV did you see where they thought it was so-and-so and then it was so-and-so and then all of a sudden evidence shows these are the perpetrators. This is why we need a trial. Let's bring out the evidence. Let's hear from the witnesses. Let's hear from the victims. Let's see the forensics. Let's hear from the medical examiner's office. Let's see it. Let's hear it. And we could come to the truth. And guess what? You know where that truth would be? It would be Richard Halliday's truth. That's where it will lead. So, thank you so much. And I think that would also bring peace and justice to the victims and their families. It would for us. Thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye.